Hi, welcome to another endorsement interview with the Times Editorial Board. Today we have two candidates for Lake County Council in the 4th District. We have the incumbent Dan Dernulc, the Republican in this race, and Katy Dowling, the challenger, is a Democrat. I'm Doug Ross, editorial page editor. Also in the room with us we have Bob Heiss, editor, and Brian Vernellis on the other side of the lens as videographer. Thanks for coming. Why don't we begin with just a real quick bit about who you are and how it prepared you for this race. Dan.
As you said earlier, I'm the incumbent, and I've been in politics for about 20 years. I've lived in Highland my whole life, have a family, 4 kids, graduate of Bishop Knoll and Purdue University with a BS in electrical engineering technology, and just love serving my constituents, and I hope to keep doing that after January 1.
Okay, Kate.
I live here in Cherville with my husband David and our rescue dog, Mama Mia, that we adopted from the Humane Society. I have for the last 11 years worked in levels of local and county government as well as in a school district. For the last 6.5 years, I have served in a public finance role. I'm currently a chief financial officer for a public school district, and prior to that I served for 5.5 years as the deputy clerk treasurer under Michael Griffin, the Highland clerk treasurer. I also have an immense record of service to our community. I sit on the board of directors for the Humane Society Calumet area, Mental Health America Lake County, various groups, just my dedication to our community. I've been doing that for years. And I have a desire to serve, since I have the experience as a public finance professional, to serve in that capacity given the fact that the county council is the fiscal body for our county government.
Okay, let's delve into the financial issues, because the county council is all finances to all intents and purposes. So we've got the new income tax. How do you think it should be used, Dan?
Well, as you know, I voted against it. I know the newspaper was for it, but there's a number of reasons why right now and in the future we really need to look at making hard decisions as it relates to our government. The 1.5%, as you know, first of all, we had to pass a 1%, and half a percent quarter goes to CAGIT and seeded. Seeded being economic development, and the CAGIT being, of course, E911. But I think before we did that and pass the tax, we need to look at how we govern and how our government works. We do not have a central HR department. We need one. We have over 1,500 employees, and I feel that is something that is needed. Along with that, I believe that we need to cross-train employees that can be cross-trained and work with them. Through attrition, I think we also need to be smarter and look at the folks that do work in our government. Each employee is valuable. We have some of the greatest people that work there, but I think we need to right-size our government and the folks that work there. And I'm not advocating laying off anybody, but maybe through attrition, look at how we're governed and see if we could hire people with skills. And again, that's how the HR department would work. We would use them as a group that would work to hire people that are skilled and qualified. And the last item, or the 2 last items, look at our insurance. I work for a big corporation. We've had to work to right-size our insurance. Along with when I was on the Highland Town Council, we had to look at ways of saving, but also offering the same service and level of service to our employees. So I've done that. But we also have to look at looking at closing our satellite offices on the north end. Maybe not all of them, but looking at those and seeing, is that the right way to use our money and our monies? Again, we are the fiscal side, so it's difficult because again that decision would have to be from the commissioners, but it's something that we really need to look at. And I believe, again, before a 1.5% income tax was put into place and passed, we needed to do that. we did not do that, and I believe we still have an opportunity to do it, and hopefully, this council will look at some of the ways that we could right-size our government.
Okay, Katie?
I think we all know that tax increases erode disposable income, and then as a result of that, it has a negative impact on our local economy. And then if people don't have that money to spend, then they're not investing in our local businesses, which then has an adverse effect on our business investment. So the income tax is here. The question becomes, what do we do with it from this point? I must say I'm still disappointed that we do not have a centralized human resource department. It is necessary. The candidate questions that the Times had, there was a big focus on the staffing and the compensation for the county sheriff's department. As we all know, the sheriff's department does more than police the unincorporated areas. However, if you had a centralized HR department, they'd be able to evaluate staffing, evaluate the responsibilities, and then establish a benchmark to compare that against, so that you could have a true understanding of what is adequate, what does it need to be, what are we paying police officers in other communities, and where are we at. I believe Lake County, I want to say, is the second lowest paid. However, people don't want to hear that they're getting, employees are getting a pay increase while we're paying more out of our check. I pay it, you pay it, we all pay it, the 1.5%. So I must agree, the fact that we still don't have a centralized HR department is a problem. And another problem there is there is no strategic plan that has been approved by the county council to deal with matters of whatever, cross-training, to deal with this is the ebb and flow of that building. I worked in the Lake County Treasurer's office. I know what those busy times are. So it's fair to say that staff can be cross-trained to compensate in other departments when they are not as busy, because everybody's office workflow is different. So a strategic plan that's approved by the board would be key. Everything needs to be evaluated. In Lake County, obviously, the commissioners have the contract authority, not the Lake County Council. So in terms of the insurance being rebid and changed, that goes through the commissioner's office. But there needs to be a way the council can work with them so that we can do right by the taxpayers and also do right by the people that support the county government.
Okay. You touched on many issues, so let's go with the closing the satellite offices for an example. If you close it, then where do you move those functions, and does that mean additional construction elsewhere? Does that mean, what are the implications for transporting the citizens to where they need to be? Katie?
My concern with the satellite offices is that we do not have an established, solid public transit system here. Our communities in the northern end are frankly more impoverished and are economically disadvantaged as compared to the southern end of this county. And so my only concern is, without a way to get people where they need to be, we don't have public transit. We have GPTC that's sort of filling a gap, but it is not a full flourishing system like you see in other areas. I think it is an issue that needs to be looked at. I think we need to examine all opportunities to lower cost, but not if that comes with denying access to the people that we serve. And so I think that needs to be evaluated where those services can be done. I mean, the treasurer's office is a good example. A lot of those payments now are open at all the banks, and Treasurer Patalis has done a great job of trying to get that information to the community so that people know you don't need to come to Crown Point, Gary, or Hammond. You can go to any bank, but there's still a line of people that come in to pay their taxes. So I think that those go hand in hand. You need a solution for public transit to coincide with, if you're going to eliminate those opportunities for people to be able to come in.
Okay, Dan?
I do agree that there has to be some type of a transit plan. I think that the North Township has now contracted with Prompt to get this, so possibly a dial right system that would work. GPTC is a very good transit system. I think that they do quite well. But before we expand it, we really need to look at what is needed. related to moving the satellite offices, again, onto the complex in Crown Point, Larry Blanchard, who was a county councilman at one time, several years ago, did have a plan, and he did the studies that it was about a $5 million savings. Okay, that's quantified, but it's something that we really need to look at. Again, right-sizing our government. We need to look outside the box on things that we do, and I really feel that you know, if we don't close all of the offices on the north end, maybe look at ways of consolidating maybe into one location on the north end. You know, again, we don't want to burden anybody with not having transportation, but we really do need to look at how our government is run. And that, as it relates to the strategic plan, I did start a strategic plan. It is, in fact, I talked to the IU today on it, and they are in the process of working with our county councilmen and women. They talked to Dante Grandelli, who's our financial person, and unfortunately, it's slower than I would hope. But it's something that we did in Highland when I was on the town council in Highland, and I believe that that's a great tool. So we know what we need now, next year, 5 years, and so on. Living document, of course, could change, but it's something that I agree with Katie that it's something that we need to have implemented.
Okay. How do you finance public transportation if we begin it? I mean, you know, for all of Lake County.
Well, if you finance, I mean, you could finance it. We could do it through the RDA. We don't have a bus authority anymore. That is one way. You know, the county council has just agreed to Congressman Visklowski's move out of the South Shore extension. I believe, you know, that is something that is a good way of using the tax dollars that are here that we've raised, and you know, look at what is needed. Again, right sizing, working with, you know, dollar do we need in our district? Do we need a full bus service? Don't think so. Maybe something else will show it that we do, but we're not as dense as the north end of the county. And again, just thinking outside the box on how we get our residents to places, for example, down to the county, so they could do their needs if necessary.
Okay.
Logically, if the figure generally from Mr. Blanchard is that closing those offices saves $5 million, I would say you would implement and fund it with that savings. Not saying you need the entire $5 million. I have no way to know what you would need to operate a transit system, and it would be dependent upon what's the breadth of your offering. How much transit, what's your schedule, all the things that factor into that. Even if it were an expansion of GPTC to offer that service, Chicago still has a public transit system within it. But to me, the first line would be if you are going to generate a savings from closing the outer offices, then I would think you would pump that savings or a portion of it into funding regional bus transit. The other part of that is the seated money. I think some of that money is tied up with the county police department, but you have to take a good look at that money and see where it's funded. And if strategically you're lowering costs through those other things, you should be able to fund it out of a savings.
Okay. As you know, the county is responsible for roads and bridges and whatnot. What do you think of the condition of the roads and bridges? Do you think they need more or less funding, and how would you do it? Katie?
I think that after this winter, everybody is very aware of the infrastructure in general, not just in the county unincorporated areas, but in the cities and towns as well, and even at the state level. We have a budget, we have to live within our means, but you need to allocate those resources based on the needs of your community. And infrastructure is so important, not just for the people that live in those communities, but also from an economic development perspective. Businesses aren't going to want to relocate if the infrastructure isn't there for them to be able to support the expansion and for people to be able to get to their facilities. So I would look at the existing resources and how they're allocated, we obviously have motor vehicle highway money. That money has been reduced over time. The first increase that they saw, because we had decreases when I worked for the town of Highland, there was an increase for 2014 because the state finally took off the non-infrastructure related things they were paying for, like the state police and the BMV out of that money. But it's still at a 2008 funding level, and the weather here is obviously not conducive to preservation of our infrastructure. So, again, you have to look at where are you allocating those resources, and are those resources allocated to where the people and the business community need them to be allocated.
Okay.
We just passed our budget for the county at the county council, and one of the things I pushed was to put more money into Cume Bridge and Cume drains. My district, our district, Katy's my district, has been hit by several floods. Maybe not the whole towns or cities, but something that I think, in fact, I know it's needed. Being a former member of the Little Calumet River Basin Commission, you could see the desire of our residents to make sure that the drains are worked on and made sure that they're clear. Along with that, the bridges. The bridges are an important element to, of course, our infrastructure. We and I'm speaking more of the state, has been, I think, kind of backwards, if you will, to add more money to our bridges and even roads. Again, we passed that element in our budget, so we do have money put aside for some of the bridges. One item that I will go down to, and I've talked to several of our county councilmen, next year, and when we've talked to some of the legislators already, we need to get the state to give us more money for these roads. We're falling apart. You talk to our public works superintendent or our road superintendent, Marcus Melcheski, he will tell you how bad they're in. And quite frankly, the cost of materials doesn't go down, keeps going up. And we really have to see what the state can do for us and help us out. And I will promise that I will go down there and get that done the best I can.
Okay. Bob, did you?
Well, that leads me to a question I always ask the legislative candidates, but you kind of brought it up a little bit here. Is, do you feel that we get our fair share from the state? I hear that a lot as a new resident, and I know there's but as should Lake County get, should you expect more for roads and things like that? I'll start with you, Dan.
Sure. No, we do not. And I think we need to be more of the going down there in our and being a cheerleader. Now, I think we've made some strides with some of the people that have been elected over the last couple of years, but we now have to push them to really get us to have some legislation that benefits us in the roads and our infrastructure, not just roads, but bridges and drainage too. And and I could go on and on and on. But I think they've been, for whatever reason, resistant. But I think with our, with some of the legislators that I've forged a relationship on both sides of the aisle, I feel that we can do that. And the legislators are representing us down there too, and they have to be that voice, regardless of who they are. But I think at the local level where we are, I think we need to get them and push them a little bit to make sure that we are well funded for our roads.
I don't believe that we're entitled to more than our fair share. So the allocation is what is concerning to me, because like your motor vehicle highway funding is based off of your population and a number the county determines that you get for that population, per person, if you will. However, does that account for the number of miles of roads that we have? There's areas that may have a similar population or a less population, but they may have more roads. They may have less roads. how are they evaluating what that funding is determined and how it's, how we determine what comes up here to Lake County? I know that in the last session, I'm getting the same campaign mailers that everybody else is, and they're talking about this increase in road funding. None of it came here to Lake County. I personally have issues with the toll road lease and how that money was allocated. A lot of that money was spent not in Lake County or in Northwest Indiana for a toll road that exists here. So I'm not saying that we should get things at anybody else's expense. I'm just not sure that the way that they currently fund it is fair to a community with the type of population density, the numbers of bridges, and as we all know, we still don't have a rebuild of Klein Avenue Bridge, toll road or not. It doesn't exist. And then with the bankruptcy of the toll road, you have to be cautious about leasing out your assets. So I agree you need to work with the legislators. I'm not sure that the bulk of them that are located outside of Northwest Indiana are concerned enough about this, what condition our infrastructure is in up here.
Well, Katie, you touched on economic development, which is a good thing because, one of the key things we're hearing from people is that they're majorly concerned about job creation. So what could the county council do?
Well, I think you can encourage job growth by keeping your taxes low and encouraging investment through the use of economic development tools. The county, there is an economic development board which is not funded by the county. It's actually, I believe, supported through the federal government. And with that board, you can support property reinvestment, tax abatements, and TIF districts. They were involved in the reinvestment in the area of the 51 and Route 30 corridor. And I think they've had successes. They may have had some items that could have been done better. One thing I'm interested in is if we could get legislation that would allow for abatements for homeowners when they reinvest in their homes. You have a ranch home and you've outgrown it because you moved in as a newlyweds and now you have 3 kids. Well, if you build a dormer, there's no way for you to get an abatement to try to encourage that investment instead of moving and migrating south to somewhere where you can get some land and build a new home. We offer that to businesses. I would be interested to see if we could get legislation that would support that for the people who live here as well. And I think it would help support the reinvestment in our northern communities. Because we all have aging communities at this point.
Okay, Dan?
Yeah, touching on the last subject that Katie brought up, the president of the county council has brought that up, and in theory, I'm for it. I want to see a little bit more, but I think it's something that we need to look at, so we could abate, any new, upgrades to your home and so on. It's something that we need to look at again. It's that's looking outside the box. I've been part of several meetings with the Lake County Economic Alliance, and it's been very interesting. They brought in the chairman of the IEDC a couple of weeks ago. We met with several elected officials, business owners, CEOs, and it was a good discussion. Very, very blunt and very to the point. Sometimes even a little bit uncomfortable from some of the elected folks, but it was a good discussion where I think they could go down to Indianapolis and look. But again, moving to what we need. Again, I use the analogy tools in the toolbox. And some of the items that we need: sales tax increment financing. Look at home rule. Tax abatements. We did implement that in Highland. But stiff sales tax increment financing, and I'm not advocating we need to use it, but let's face it, nowadays to bring in jobs, you need to have economic development, and you need to have businesses that come in, and businesses nowadays want some type of incentive. I want to be able to have those tools in that toolbox to work it. And again, I feel that is something that as we move forward, we really have to try to convince the legislature to give us those tools. Again, no one wants more of a tax, but if there's an opportunity to bring jobs in and have economic development in areas that are blighted, areas that need some type of a boost, we should look at that. So.
We're recording this on a day where a number of public safety issues have arisen regarding abandoned buildings and so forth. So we're seeing a lot of money go toward the jail. We're seeing a lot of money go toward the 911 consolidation. Where do you see the biggest public safety need at this point in terms of county money, Dan?
Well, we need to make sure our officers have all the tools that they need. And just to touch on the jail, unfortunately, we are being mandated by the federal government. I think the sheriff that we have, and again, there's some things I can't bring up, but the sheriff has done a pretty decent job. But right now, I think we need to look at how things are being done going forward as it relates to jail and the mandates. We do have meetings with the DOJ, and it's something that, again, we need to get that off our back. It will ultimately save our residents money once that issue is resolved. But I believe we need to, again, give our officers the tools. When I was on the council in Highland, and even now, I try to be as I'm a public safety guy, and I want to make sure that our residents are safe from fires, any type of crime or whatever. Do the best we can. Ultimately, if a bad guy wants to get to you, he will get to you. But we want to make sure that we want to make sure that the officers have all the tools that they need.
Okay, Katie?
And I think I said earlier, public safety is always everybody's priority because people deserve to live in safe communities. It's also your most expensive venture because there's really very little way to recoup that cost. I think the county budget is 75-80% made up of public safety expenses related to when you look at the whole big picture, the jail, the whole enchilada, if you will. So I think that the mandate is what it is. When they get out from under it, they'll be able to streamline some things better. I'm interested, and this is something that's totally at the purview of the sheriff, not for the county council, but there are certifications like CALIA, which I'm familiar with. My husband's the chief of police in the town of Cherville. They have that certification. Munster has it. Valparaiso, St. John's working on it. They offer that certification for jails as well as for police departments, and that would be interesting to see if that's a venture that we could all work cooperatively towards to help control those costs. And the big thing is it mitigates liability because it's standardized processes in place that help to mitigate being sued because you're following those processes and they have process checks and things of that nature. So yes, they need the tools, yes, they need all those things, but are they delivering it the best way? That goes back to an HR department evaluating what they're doing, what their responsibilities are, and how many people they need. And obviously that department has to work in conjunction with the sheriff because he is an independently elected official, but I think that everybody has to work together for those solutions. I think we get a little caught up in whose house is it instead of it's all of our house, because the reality is those monies that are coming out of CEDAT to fund things in the jail now can't be used to fund public transit. They can't be used to do abatements in the unincorporated area. I mean, it just ties up that funding. So I think you have to look at how can you reduce those costs, and I think certifications are a very interesting way people are going.
Okay. What a number of the things that you've said, you seem to agree with each other. What's the primary difference between the two of you, Katie?
For me personally, and I mean no disrespect to Dan, I'm in the meat and potatoes of public finance. This is what I do every day. 6.5 years, this is what I've worked in. I deal with budgets, I deal with the finance. I'm a practitioner of public finance, and with the county council being the fiscal body, my experience is in line with those duties and responsibilities, and we need to elect people that have the qualifications to serve in the positions for which they are running. I would also say that I'm a consensus builder. When I worked in Highland, you may be familiar, there's no mayor, obviously, so you have a council and you have Mr. Griffin who's independently elected, and we have all of our departments. They didn't have to listen to anything that Michael or I said. But we had to work with them to get them on board with the direction we needed to go so that we could get where we needed to do, so that when we had flooding, we had reserve monies available. Highland wasn't riffing when everybody else was, or furloughing, because you have such a wonderful public finance professional in that position. So I have that experience. Where I work now, I have 9 elected school board members that I work with, and 8 buildings with principals and people who all want more. And so we always manage to find solutions, and usually in a perfect world, when you get a solution, usually nobody's exactly happy, but everybody's getting something that they want. And so I have that experience, so we can work towards solutions that are qualified, work towards solutions so we're providing the best service for our number one customer, which is our constituents and our business community.
Okay, Dan?
No disrespect taken. Before I bring up a couple of the differences, I applaud Katy as it relates to running. I don't consider her my opponent. A lot of people consider people opponents and so on. She wants a position that I have right now, and I respect that. But I do have some I think experience as it relates to knowing how to balance a budget, working with folks. I was on the town council for 4 years in the town of Highland. Worked to be a consensus builder there. I think you could talk to our clerk treasurer. I think he will say that I really did try. In fact, he mentioned that I was one of the best councilmen he's ever seen. So I appreciate what he said when I was in that office. I too am again a consensus, like you said earlier, a consensus builder. Our attorney on the county council has never seen a more functioning county council, and it's because I consider the ladies and gentlemen on this friends. We do have disagreements as it relates to how we run our government. However, we need to compromise, and I've said many a times, if Washington could see how we run and maybe not agree on everything, that would be I think they would be better off, and we would get probably more things done in our country. I also served on the Little Calumet River Basin Commission. I think the results show that I again working with the residents along with the Army Corps. The residents were great to work with. They were behind us. But working with the Army Corps was tough, but we came to a conclusion and that they will be accountable if they are accountable. It's not going to go back on that Little Calumet River, and we had a halfway decent relationship. It wasn't the best, but it was halfway decent. And we hired people, a person, and we did have to remove some folks when we didn't think it was they were that we need to hire people that were going to do the job right. So that's what I have. Again, I've been in government in one form or fashion. If it wasn't on a commission, it's serving on the town council for 4 years, serving as a chairman for about 1.5 years on the Little Carroll, and then now on the county council.
Okay. Is there anything we didn't ask that we should have, Dan?
I appreciate you letting me come today. Appreciate Katy being here, and my intent, of course, is to win. But whoever it does, win, I hope we can support each other, and I look forward to the next year and the next 4 years.
Okay,
I just
Katy?
thank you for the Times and for the coverage of the races, for all of them, because it's an important way for the public to get an inside view to what people's positions are. We live in a social era, so I appreciate the opportunity and for all that you do to educate our voting public.
Okay. Well, I'm afraid that's all the time we have with Dan Dernulc and Katy Dowling. Thank you for viewing.